The Knights of Ren wiped out a generation of Jedi. Darth Vader wiped out a generation of Jedi too. So what happens when they actually meet? That question sounds like a fan debate, and for years, it was. People argued about it in comment sections, on forums, in Discord servers. 6 dark side warriors with brutal weapons, force sensitivity, and a kill record against trained Jedi, versus 1 Sith Lord in a black suit who choked an admiral to death through a hologram. Who wins? The thing is, Star Wars canon already answered this. In writing. In print. In a Marvel Comics miniseries published on April 27, 2022. The fight happened. Darth Vader met the Knights of Ren at his own castle on Mustafar, and the result wasn't a debate. But here's the wrinkle. The Knights completed their mission and walked away alive. So was it a Vader win? Was it a Knights win? That's the argument that's been running ever since, and we're going to settle it today. But first, we need to understand exactly who walked into that fight, because if you don't know what each side is capable of, the result won't mean anything. Darth Vader, in the period between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, is the most dangerous thing alive in the Star Wars galaxy. Not the most dangerous Sith in history, not the most powerful character ever conceived, but by any operational measure during the Imperial era, he is the Emperor's fist, the galaxy's primary enforcer, and the standard by which everything else gets measured. The feats aren't speculative. In Rogue One, he pursues a group of rebel soldiers through a darkened corridor of a starship, force pulls a blaster from one man's hands, deflects their fire back at them, and kills his way through the squad in under a minute. That's on film. That's canon. And that benchmark is important. It shows Vader in a sustained, multi-opponent engagement where he's simultaneously controlling space with the Force and ending lives with his blade, without breaking stride. In The Empire Strikes Back, he force chokes Admiral Ozzel to death across 2 separate ships through a hologram screen. Ozzel is on one Star Destroyer, Vader is on another. Light years of space between them, and it doesn't matter. The grip closes anyway. The telekinetic range demonstrated in that moment is staggering, and it's a film canon moment that establishes something the Crimson Reign event later proves. Vader doesn't need line of sight, doesn't need to close distance, and doesn't need to draw his lightsaber to kill you. The Marvel Disney canon comic runs, specifically the 2015 series by Kieran Gillen and the 2020 series by Greg Pak, push those benchmarks further. In the Pak run, Vader holds back an ocean through sheer force will, one of the most staggering sustained force exertions in Disney canon. These aren't hallway scenes, they're sustained force exertions under extreme duress. The suit presents real constraints. His mobility is limited compared to what Anakin Skywalker was capable of in the prequel era. But every operational limitation his armor imposes is compensated by the sheer volume of anger, pain, and grief he channels through the dark side. His suffering isn't a weakness, it's fuel. The suit keeps him in agony every moment it's operating, and that agony feeds directly into his force potency. That's the man who showed up on Mustafar. Now the Knights. The Knights of Ren aren't a joke. They're not stormtroopers with a different outfit. They are a dark side order, a philosophical brotherhood devoted to something they call the Shadow, and every member is force sensitive. Force sensitivity was a confirmed prerequisite for joining. The Knights only accepted beings capable of connecting to the dark side. So when you're looking at that group, you're looking at 6 force wielders, each trained in brutal close combat disciplines, each carrying weapons specifically engineered to kill. Vikrul carries a vibrosonic scythe built from Frick and Beskar, 2 of the most lightsaber-resistant materials in the galaxy. He also has heightened reflexes and fear-inducing abilities, and he's considered the most force-sensitive member of the group. Aplek uses an ancient Mandalorian executioner's vibro-axe and operates through deception and misdirection. His force abilities reportedly let him disrupt sensor equipment. Cardo wields a custom arm-mounted cannon combining a flamethrower, plasma bolt launcher, and standard blaster. Ushar favors a mace with concussive blast capability. Karuk is their pilot, operating a modified blaster rifle as his primary weapon. And then there's their leader in this era, Not Kylo Ren, but the man simply called Ren, who carries a lightsaber and functions as the group's combat anchor. Two of these members, Vikrul and Cardo specifically, are confirmed as long-serving knights who were active during the Imperial era, long before Ben Solo had anything to do with the group. So when the Crimson Reign event unfolds, you're looking at experienced warriors, not rookies. Against untrained or partially trained Force users, the Knights have a legitimate record. In the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, they exchanged blows with Vo, a Jedi student trained by Luke Skywalker. They successfully overwhelmed an unarmed Ben Solo, who was at the time one of the most powerful Force sensitives alive, through coordinated assault. The Rise of Skywalker novelization later notes that against an armed Ben Solo with a lightsaber, they had no chance. But without that blade, they handled him. Their Force abilities are real, but they're instinctual and emotion-driven rather than disciplined. One member's dark side connection reportedly deepened with each kill, power accumulated through violence, not mastery. Luke Skywalker encountered the group and was unimpressed by their fundamental technique, describing their use of the dark side as basic. That's an important testimony. Luke wasn't particularly impressed by their skill set against a trained Jedi. But a trained Jedi and Darth Vader aren't the same category of opponent, and the Knights knew that going into Mustafar. Their philosophy doesn't help them here either. Ren's doctrine, as captured in the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, is that the Ren doesn't stop to worry about what it burns or who it hurts. Destruction is the point. That's a fundamentally different framework from Sith discipline. The rule of two specifically exists to forge practitioners of ruthless focus and absolute power. The Knights are a pack. Vader is a predator. Those are different things. So how did this fight even happen? During the Galactic Civil War, after the Empire Strikes Back, before Return of the Jedi, a woman named Lady Qi'ra was running a galaxy-spanning criminal operation called Crimson Dawn. If you've seen Solo, a Star Wars story, you know Qi'ra as Han's first love from Corellia, the woman who had to stay behind when he escaped slavery. By this point in the timeline, she's rebuilt Crimson Dawn into a major power, and her ambition has metastasized into something extraordinary. She's trying to destabilize and ultimately destroy the Sith themselves. To do that, she needed weapons. Specifically, she needed a Sith artifact called the Screaming Key, a relic of unknown purpose stored in Darth Vader's personal vault at Fortress Vader on Mustafar. Getting it required infiltrating a dark side stronghold built on top of a Sith temple nexus, on a volcanic planet, in the personal lair of the Emperor's enforcer. Qi'ra hired the Knights of Ren for the job. The Knights were, by definition, the only Force-capable operatives in the galaxy, both willing and equipped to attempt a heist against the Sith. Most people wouldn't survive the idea. Ren's group at least had a fighting chance. They were Force-sensitive, battle-hardened, and ideologically unconcerned with consequences. The Knights received their mission briefing in orbit above Mustafar, hovering over the lava-covered planet where Anakin Skywalker had been defeated and broken 3 decades earlier, in the exact spot where Darth Vader was born. Crimson Reign Issue 4 was written by Charles Soule and drawn by Stephen Cummings. Published April 27, 2022. What follows is the canonical historical record. The Knights breach Fortress Vader. The mission parameters assume Vader is off-planet. He isn't. What happens next happens fast. One of the Knights reaches the Bacta tank, Vader's personal recovery pod, the equipment that keeps him functional between operations, and apparently desecrates it. The specific act isn't the point. The point is that somewhere in Fortress Vader, Darth Vader felt the intrusion, and he came. Ren uses the Force to locate the Screaming Key among Vader's stored artifacts. He doesn't see it, he hears it. The comic establishes that he used the Force to hear the screams of the key and find it among all the other artifacts. That's a sophisticated Force application, one that demonstrates genuine sensitivity beyond brute force ability. He gets to the vault. He finds what they came for, and then Vader arrives. No warning, no negotiation, no theatrical declaration. His immediate response to finding intruders in his castle is lethal force. Vader locks onto a knight named Fyodor. Force choke, applied at range. The same telekinetic grip that killed Ozzel across 2 ships. And then, through that grip, a neck snap. Wikipedia cites this directly from the issue. Vader started his attack with a force choke, aiming it at Knight Fyodor and snapping the knight's neck. 1 knight, 0 seconds. He doesn't draw his lightsaber. He doesn't need to. The remaining knights, with the screaming key now in hand, make a run for it. Ren does not run. Ren turns around and engages Darth Vader in lightsaber combat to buy his people time to escape. Multiple reviews of the issue, including the Star Wars Newsnet coverage, characterize the duel with the same 3 words. Clearly overmatched, didn't last long. The Minoc Manor review put it more precisely. Ren and Vader's duel is short when he arrives, as it should be. That phrase, as it should be, is the reviewer signaling that the power gap isn't a surprise. It's appropriate. Ren wields his lightsaber. Vader immediately begins to overpower him. The exchange is brief and one-directional. Vader lands a blow across Ren's torso. The scar that Ren carries in later appearances, the one Ben Solo sees when he encounters the Knights in The Rise of Kylo Ren, originates from this moment. Vader put it there. During the duel, Vader addresses Ren directly. The line, based on a breakdown of the comic's content, goes essentially, "A red blade. Whoever you think you aren't worthy of that weapon." He reportedly describes the group to the Emperor afterward as a pathetic rabble. Both of those characterizations matter, not because Vader is wrong, but because he isn't insulting them strategically. He's not playing mind games. He genuinely doesn't consider them real dark side practitioners. A group of force-sensitive brawlers who accumulated their abilities through violence and instinct, not through the discipline of the Sith, not through the trials of the Force, but through sheer, repeated brutality. And Vader has exactly that much respect for them. None. His contempt is efficient. 2 statements, then action. Bloodied and clearly unable to continue, Ren makes a decision. He jumps. Out of a window, off the side of Fortress Vader, down toward the surface of Mustafar. The remaining knights lay down blaster fire, combined weapons fire from multiple members, to stagger Vader and create a moment of disruption. Vader uses the Force to pull the screaming key back to his hand. Ren takes it back from him and retreats. The knights escape on speeder bikes. Fyodor is dead. Everyone else makes it out. They have the screaming key. Mission accomplished by any objective heist metric. The closing narration of the issue states, "And Darth Vader never forgets." That last line tells you something. Vader doesn't forget, which means he was angry enough about the outcome that the comic felt the need to flag it as a future consequence. He was furious. Not because the knights were a genuine threat to him, because they violated his castle, killed nothing of his, stole from his vault, and left. That's the part that burns him. Not fear, offense. His contempt, delivered mid-duel, is the real editorial verdict on the matchup. The knights carry red weapons. Ren fights with a red lightsaber, and Vader told him directly that he wasn't worthy of it. That's a Sith Lord looking at a dark side warrior and saying, "You haven't earned the color. You're wearing the uniform without having paid the cost." Vader measures people by the dark side's standards, and by those standards, the knights are performing a rough approximation of what the dark side can do, driven by emotion and instinct, without the underlying discipline that makes a Sith genuinely terrifying. He sees them the way a master swordsman sees a street brawler who picked up a sword. Dangerous to most people, an annoyance to him. Now here's where the argument starts, because there is a real case to be made that the knights didn't lose this encounter, not in any holistic sense. 1 knight died, 5 survived. The mission was completed. The screaming key left Mustafar in Ren's hand. Multiple reviewers noted genuine surprise at this outcome. The Laughing Place review called it exactly that. To their extreme surprise, the knights actually managed to get the better of Vader and escape with the screaming key. Even CBR ran a headline framing it as Vader being bested, though the article itself clarifies that he dominated the actual combat. The counterfactual here is real. Vader held the screaming key in his hand. He force-pulled it back during the chase, and then Ren took it from him again. By any mission success metric, that's a completed objective. The Knights came for a specific artifact, fought through Darth Vader to get it, and left with it. 6 opponents versus 1. Combined blaster fire and coordinated movement staggered him long enough to enable the escape. Their collective action, not individual power, created the window. And Ren did something genuinely difficult. He engaged Darth Vader in lightsaber combat and survived. The duel was brief and one-sided, yes. He took a blow across the torso that left a permanent scar, but he didn't die. He jumped off a building rather than continuing, which is arguably the smartest tactical decision in the encounter. A fan argument that circulated after the comic dropped put it this way. Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back lasted longer against Vader than Ren did, and everyone agrees that Vader was clearly superior to Empire Strikes Back Luke. That's a devastating scaling argument for the Knights' side, and it's not wrong. Ren's performance in a straight duel isn't impressive by any Force user benchmark. But here's what the mission success argument doesn't account for. The Knights survived because they stopped fighting. The moment Ren recognized he couldn't win, the moment the blow landed, he threw himself out a window. The escape worked because the goal was always a heist, not a fight. Kira didn't hire them to defeat Vader. She hired them to steal an artifact. They structured the entire operation around not fighting Vader, and when they were forced to fight him, they bought approximately enough time to run. In a fight to the death with no exit, no windows to jump through, no speeder bikes waiting on the surface, no mission objective that allows retreat, Ren gets killed after Fyodor. The remaining Knights last longer, but the math doesn't change. Vader killed Fyodor without drawing his blade. He dominated Ren with a blade in hand. Multiple opponents with blasters staggered him for a few seconds. None of that adds up to a victory condition in a closed-space engagement where the only outcome is survival. The counter-argument that the Knights survived is true only in the context of a heist. In a straight fight, they don't survive. One question the title raises that's worth addressing directly. The video refers to Kylo Ren's elite squad. In the Crimson Reign event, the Knights weren't serving Kylo Ren. They were serving the original Ren, a scarred human Force sensitive who led the group through the Imperial era and into the early New Republic period. Ben Solo killed Ren in single combat in The Rise of Kylo Ren Issue 4, published by Marvel in 2020. That's the leadership transfer. Ben Solo defeats the man, takes his name, and becomes Kylo Ren, leader of the Knights from that point through the sequel trilogy. But here's the critical continuity detail. Vikrul and Cardo are both confirmed as members who served during the Imperial era, long before Ben Solo ever encountered the group. The 6 Knights who appear in The Rise of Skywalker, Vikrul, Aplek, Kuruk, Trudgen, Cardo, Ushar, are substantially the same organization that broke into Fortress Vader. Different boss, same crew, same philosophy, same methods. So when the title says Kylo Ren's Knights, it's using his name for recognition. The fighters on Mustafar were this squad, just under earlier management. The outcome doesn't change based on who was signing their paychecks. The verdict. In a deathmatch, no heist objective, no escape routes, no secondary mission that gives the Knights a reason to disengage, Vader kills them all. The canonical record makes this clear not by showing a prolonged struggle, but by showing the opposite. Vader is immediately dominant, kills the first Knight in seconds with no lightsaber drawn, overpowers Ren in a brief duel, and is only denied a complete kill count because the Knights stop fighting and run. The Wikipedia summary of the Crimson Reign trade paperback frames the broader encounter this way. Darth Vader showed Kira's criminal organization that the Empire isn't to be toyed with. That's the official in-universe editorial, not the Knights proved their worth, not a genuine contest was had. The Empire demonstrated that it can't be challenged this way. Luke Skywalker, who encountered the Knights and reviewed their abilities directly, was unimpressed by their basic use of the dark side. Vader, who fought their leader and watched him bleed from a torso wound and dive out a window, called them a pathetic rabble, unworthy of their own weapons. Those are two separate witnesses, one Jedi, one Sith, arriving at essentially the same conclusion about where the Knights sit on the Force user hierarchy. The one genuine ambiguity in the record is this: the Knights completed the mission. Kira got her artifact. Vader never forgot, but he also never got it back. By that narrow measure, the specific operational parameters of that specific day, the Knights of Ren outmaneuvered the most dangerous man in the galaxy. They did it through planning, tactical retreat, and the willingness to take losses. That's not nothing. 6 people walked into Darth Vader's house, 1 walked out dead, and the rest made it. Very few characters in the Star Wars universe can claim they engaged Vader directly and escaped. The Knights can, and Ren carries the scar to prove he actually tried. But the scar also tells the other story, the one where Vader put it there. So here's the question for the comments. Does completing the mission count as a win? The Knights lost the fight, took a casualty, and ran. But they got what they came for. Is that a W for the Knights? Or just a very expensive delivery job that Vader let them complete because he couldn't stop 5 people fleeing on speeder bikes fast enough? Drop your verdict below. Subscribe for more stories like this.